I've seen so often that the only way to get information safely to a recipient, securely if you like, is using post. And post can take 7 to 10 days for these things. That then has to be got to the person who needs it. So you're potentially looking at a 2-week delay on collating information for a transaction that is really, really urgent.
How to keep customer trust in fragmented communications processes. As head of network sales for Beyond Encryption, you deal with financial advisory firms who communicate with customers and clients, but also have to communicate with lots of other parties about those customers and clients. And that can lead to, as we'll talk about, fragmented communications processes. So I think a good place to start would be to ask what the main communication challenges are.
In 2024, sort of post the pandemic and the acceleration of digital communications, etc., and digital processes for communicating with clients, it's become really clear that one size does not fit all. Many companies now, probably no businesses will have no kind of secure communication process in place. However, sort of putting one solution, a portal, for example, in place and thinking that that will suit all recipients is becoming very apparent is not the case. So I think the challenge is to have processes in place that will complement each other and that will suit all of your recipients, because quite simply, as we say, not all recipients want to engage, for example, with a portal for whatever reasons, for a myriad of reasons. So we see a lot of email in the clear being defaulted to, if you like, when the way that a company wants to communicate with a client is not the way that that client wants to communicate with them, should we say. And I think one size fits all doesn't just apply to the nature of the secure communication. It also applies to the urgency of that communication. So obviously, if you're just sending somebody some information that they need to keep on their side, putting that into a document portal is great. But if you're needing a response to that and you're needing an urgent response, then potentially that's not the way to go. The way to go is to have a secondary way of communicating with them securely, which puts that information right in front of them at that moment in time. And obviously, secure email then would be a really useful example of something that would complement things that are already in place. So I think the challenges are around finding the solutions that work in harmony to provide recipients, clients, people that they're communicating with securely, the choice, the option of how they communicate with them, and also something that's really efficient in the moment, with regards to what's actually required response-wise.
Yeah, I suppose email is kind of what clients default to as their preferred channel. But then you also have the other side of, if I'm an insurance company, if I'm an advisor, if I'm managing a complex process for a client where their information is being sent around, I'm then having to get stuff from consultants, surveyors, maybe. They don't tend to use your portal because they're dealing with so many different providers, different advisors, whoever, and they will default to email as well. Yeah. Can you kind of walk us through a typical situation where you see communication break down?
Yeah, of course. You mentioned conveyancing there, and I think a mortgage is a really good example of a transaction that is, urgency is for sure in play with any mortgage. And there are so many parties potentially involved in a mortgage application. You mentioned there the conveyancer, the solicitor, there's the mortgage broker. There might be numerous insurance companies involved because there are previous, for example, life insurance policies that the broker needs to know about when he's advising on new policies. So, there could be up to half a dozen existing policies in play where you have to get information from those insurance providers. And quite often, you might have things come into play where somebody that you're dealing with, it might be a remortgage, and they might have got married since they've had that mortgage, and the policies are in maiden names, and they need to get different policies, they need to get the up-to-date policies. And these are insurance companies they've not dealt with for some time, and you're quite right, they've not had need to register for their portal. So suddenly, there's no way of getting this up-to-date information to the right parties in a timely fashion. And often, I've seen so often that the only way to get information safely to a recipient, securely if you like, is using post. And post can take 7 to 10 days for these things. That then has to be got to the person who needs it. So you're potentially looking at a 2-week delay on collating information for a transaction that is really, really urgent. People get gazumped, get gets taken off the market, etc., etc. So there's a lot of pressure on the mortgage broker to get things done in a timely fashion. There's a lot of pressure for him to collate that information and get that offer, that mortgage offer to that client as quickly as possible. And there's no doubt this creates stress, etc. And again, that's back to having a fallback, if you like, a solution in play that you can fall back on should you not have the ability to use the portals that are being offered to you, so that we don't have to fall back on unsecure, let's face it, extremely laborious processes using post, etc.
It must be really difficult if you're the person, or a lot of these parties deal directly with the customer or client, provider or advisor, but you're trying to make sure that in these processes, customer data is safe.
Yeah.
And so you might end up in this situation where it's taking 7 to 10 days to do something that in this day and age, as a client or customer, you would be like, that's ridiculous. Why is this happening? That's where we lose customer trust, because you're trying to be this kind of guardian of the process for the customer. I know how this works for you, so you don't have to chase it, you don't have to worry, you don't have to have anxieties. But then the customer ends up shouldering that burden, and then trust is lost in all of these businesses that are meant to be taking care of that process for you. In that situation, I suppose a lot of individuals managing those processes or taking part in those processes, for example, conveyancers, solicitors, surveyors, might end up sending information by open email because of that pressure of all those different parties wanting information quickly. What are the risks? What are the key risks? Because I think it's important to go over them and to clarify them.
Well, there's a very obvious risk of interception of data and misuse of data, which we're all painfully aware of now. It's a huge problem. Email's been around 30 years. It hasn't changed in 30 years, which is a good and bad thing because it simply isn't secure in its native form. So there's the obvious risk of that data being intercepted by criminals. And then I think there's that risk which you've already touched on, which is the damage of the trust, because more and more the public, it's just a given that if they pass their data on to a third party, that third party is going to protect that data at all costs. That's just what they expect. And there is more and more understanding of how that data has to be protected. So there is more and more pushback when customers are asked to send things to professional services in open email. They are more and more hearing people say, I don't want to do that. I know that's not secure. What other option do I have? So there are the obvious risks. We live in a world of choice today. We live in a world where the Amazon effect is alive and kicking, and we don't live in a world anymore like our parents did, where our financial advisor, our mortgage advisor is our trusted companion forever. The minute that trust is lost for whatever reason, frustrations, being asked to do something that we know we shouldn't be doing, as soon as that trust is lost, at a click of a button, you can find somebody else to do business with, and you will find somebody else to do business with. So the other risk you have here is the loss of that customer trust and the loss of that customer's business. And obviously, the other side of that is no referral business, because that customer isn't going to be particularly favourable in their recommendations of your business. So there are some really big risks, reputational risk, as well as financial risk, as well as, compliance risks involved here.
And in terms of the alternatives to sending information by open email, because that's the kind of common denominator that everybody has access to. What are the alternatives? Or I suppose what are some of the solutions that providers, advisory firms have brought in that have kind of fixed the problem or haven't fixed the problem? Yeah,
obviously we've mentioned portals, and they're used very widely now across financial services, and very successful in certain areas. Obviously, as I say, since the pandemic and the advances we've seen around this, most larger businesses now will have a document portal at the fingertips. Password protecting is still being used as well, but pretty one-dimensional, pretty labour-intensive. I think going back to the blended approach, going back to thinking about businesses that have a portal in place, I think any business should also make sure that there is that fallback, that should they need to get information quickly to a client, should they need to get information to a client that isn't engaging with the portal, that they've got that secondary option to close that security gap, if you like, because they know that the emails, even if it's just the odd one, are going out of the business unprotected, data is going out of the business unprotected. unprotected. So just be sure to have that secondary option in play. And if you are using something, you're a smaller business and you're just password protecting, for example, take a look at what's available and think of maybe replacing that with something that's much more efficient, much more rounded, in that it provides that two-way communication with your client, with your recipient, and also something that makes sure it gets to the right recipient as well.
Because I suppose if you're password protecting, you're adding some layer of protection for delivery of some information to a client or to someone else. But then when that contract is signed or that form is filled or documents are being sent back, there's no protection there. So you do need something that enables engagement, a response, a reply. You mentioned there about how people can not engage with portals. There are some clients that don't use them. Are there common reasons for that?
I don't know if there's any specific one reason. It's a myriad of reasons, and personal choice. There'll always be that subset of people within a business that business will struggle to get to engage with their portal. You know, again, one size doesn't fit all. We all have different preferences. There is a certain amount of password fatigue. On average, I think recent research that we ran showed that people had access to over 119 portals in their lives. You know, and they just find it, you know, too many steps to take, if you like. They just want that information sent direct to their inbox where they can quickly access it, and that's what they're asking these businesses to do. So I don't think there's one specific reason. I think it's just a certain type of person who would rather not do that and finds it, as I say, one step too far.
And I imagine one of the things that people say to you most is, well, I've been using email as it stands for years. Everyone has an email. Everyone knows how to use email. I know how to use email, and I send all my stuff via email. There's never been any data breach as far as I'm concerned. I find my clients like it, and it's completely safe. You know, all my partners accept email. It is this thing where, yes, we know that you can click on a link in an email and, you know, phishing attacks, etc. But it does feel like it's become safer and safer to email over the years. And it has become safer in many ways. But there's still a risk there. You know, what do you say to businesses who don't want to change and don't want to specifically introduce friction to their processes in terms of security?
Well, first of all, I don't think introducing secure email, the way that these technologies work today, is going to create any friction. I think clients are actually going to thank you if you introduce this type of technology in a certain way to your clients, as in, we are doing this because of these risks, we are doing this to protect your data. It's actually something presented in the right way that a client will thank you for. It certainly shouldn't cause any friction. And then with regards to clients who obviously have been using email for years, and that's the reason they love it, familiarity. You know, this cybercrime is huge. No, it's an industry in its own right. It's no longer your spotty teenager in your bedroom. It's teams of people. We have help desks. It's an industry, and we can't ignore it. The ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, they tell us that we have to protect data that is going outbound from our business with encryption, with the likes of encryption, to make it safe from these cyber criminals. And we also have to make sure have controls in place to make sure that information goes to the right person to prevent these all too often breaches, which are caused by human error. So, you know, the Information Commissioner's Office are telling everybody this, and, you know, those are the rules that these businesses should be abiding to in order to protect their clients and protect their data.
Yeah, and like you say, I guess people generally in society are much more aware of their privacy and their data, and they don't want their data falling into the wrong hands.
Yeah.
So in terms of solutions, what are we looking at? You know, what would you suggest to a business who has been doing that, using email to pass around client documents? And even in these big businesses, you know, your CISO, a large financial provider, might say email is never used to pass around documents. But time and time again, despite them having, you know, portals and other solutions, this information does end up being slung to someone quickly at the end of the day in an email. So what would you say to people who are looking for solutions? What should they consider?
Well, I guess the question here is actually twofold. To people looking for solutions, I would say, look at what's incumbent, coach your staff, ask your staff, survey your staff, find them how they're using it, find out what percentage of the client base is actually engaging with that solution, and you know, get the feedback from that, and investigate whether another solution alongside that, such as a secure email solution, would help with that. And the people that are not looking to change, that think that whatever they've got in place is in place and working, it would be the same advice. I have lost count of the number of mortgage administrators, power planners, mortgage brokers I have spoken to who have access to a portal. And, one lady that I spoke to only a few days ago was telling me, these people that create these portals and provide these portals for us really do see that through rose-colored glasses. They want to actually try using it on a day-to-day basis to email our clients who are complaining bitterly. So, for certain clients, your portal is going to be enough. They're going to respond to it immediately. Great. Backwards, forwards, all the information is where it needs to be, and that's great. But for those that are not, don't try and push square pegs into round holes and get them to use that solution because that's what you've decided they're going to use. Listen to their voice, react to their voice. And I guess all this also ties in with consumer duty and putting that client right at the centre of what your business does. If that client does not want to engage with your choice of secure communication, make sure you've got a choice in place that does, provide them with what they want. And when you decide to do that, when you're looking for a secure email solution, make sure it's not a secure email solution that just encrypts and protects information in transit, but that it also has ID verification processes built into it that make sure that email goes to the right person as well, because not all encryption solutions have that. And that's really imperative that it has that as well. And the last thing, I guess, to make sure of when you're looking at these solutions is that they are easy to use. We've already mentioned we don't want any friction. So any company that's creating a secure email solution today has to look at it from the perspective really closely of that recipient journey and make sure it's effortless and easy to do business with. And so you tick all those boxes, you then have everything in place to keep that data safe and there's no leaks happening, anywhere within your business.
It's that thing again of that two-way communication, isn't it? It's actually quite common to receive an email with a button in that leads you to a portal that you can log into. And, that gives you that kind of security layer to get your documents. Yeah. But it's not yet common enough that you're then able to reply securely to that. And that's when a lot of the data ends up, in a pension transfer process or something. Yeah. You're going to have to submit some more data. You're going to have to fill a form that ends up as an attachment on your email sent to a support desk. And there's the risk. So I think,
like we referenced it right at the beginning, these transactions are complex and they can be really complex. I mean, a mortgage, a remortgage application can sail through with no problem. It can, but it can also be really complicated. As we mentioned, there can be data that's out of date and, people just get so weary of hitting hurdles that they can't get over because of A, B, C, because, my document isn't formatted correctly for this portal that this particular provider is using. It's going to take this long to come through. For whatever reason it might be, I would ask anybody watching this to sort of think about the last maybe difficult transaction, however you gauge difficult to be. Yeah. Look at the points at which you had a pinch point in that process and ask yourself, at that moment in time, would it have helped me and my client if I had access to a secure email solution? And it may well be that the answer is, well, it wouldn't have helped because I just sent it out in email in the clear. So actually I got where I wanted to be anyway. Nothing happened, so that was fine. So ask yourself those two questions. Did I take risks? And would it have helped to have had a secure email where I could have done exactly what I did, but I didn't take any risks? And if the answer to any of that is yes, then, consider looking at the secure email solutions that are available on the market.
Yeah, like you say, there's, for many of the most common processes, usually these happen without a hitch and they actually often follow, the customer can even follow the process on the provider's portal from stage to stage. Now your documents are here, now they are here. That all works perfectly if things work according to your perfectly mapped out customer journey. As soon as something happens that's anomalous, that's different than usual, even if it's for health insurance, it could be a chiropractor that's not worked with that health insurance company before and doesn't know how to submit the documents, whatever, then that creates those hurdles. And then people, it's not people on your support desk's fault that they can't send a secure email. No. But that's when they end up going, oh, just do this because it's the end of the day, because they need to get something done.
Well, yeah, and because they've got an important job to do. The guy's a chiropractor. Yeah. He's got much more important things to do than work out and have to sit there and have to work out how he formats a document to get it uploaded to a portal that he's never used before. So he's just got to email it. and the criminals are aware that this is happening and they're watching this traffic. It's
exactly what they're looking out for. So I won't keep you too much longer, but just to finish up, what's the most common pitfall that you see businesses fall into when they're looking for a secure email solution or when they're deploying a secure communication solution in general?
In general, or a secure in general?
Either, yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, it's just looking for one solution. There is, we've said it time and time again during this session, there is not one solution. So I think maybe, and I am only surmising here, but, maybe more opinion should be collated from boots on the ground, if you like, before looking at the solutions. More should be done to assess the needs of not only your employees within that business, but also, obviously the recipients as well. And don't look at it as a one and done process. If you have got something in place, constantly review that, constantly review the engagement, constantly get feedback from the workforce to say whether or not, have you had any feedback, and constantly evolve, because that's the only way businesses are going to survive, isn't it, in this day and age, to be in a position where it is easy to do business with. It's secure to do business with this firm, and there is that high level of trust, which is what we've referenced all the way through this.
I think it's often quite difficult for larger businesses, particularly when they're deploying this kind of solution, because it's ultimately a customer communication solution, which is a customer experience, customer support product thing. But it's also a security solution, which is IT and more of an internal solution. So you might have businesses that will research their customers, take the pulse of their customers to find their preferred channel, whether this kind of solution would work, and then choose a solution. They might not look at their own employees and the fact that they'll be using it every day. So you kind of have to look at both sides, don't you?
Absolutely, for sure.
So I will leave it there. Is there anything else you would like to promote, say, and where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Carole Howard. And obviously, you can find my information at the Beyond Encryption website, where you can book a demo of our secure email solution, Maillock. And that's where you'll find me.
Great stuff. Thanks, Carole.
Okay, thank you.